everybody. Start the meeting.
Oh, we're all right. Thank you.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The notice requirements of the Open Public Meeting Law have been met by transmitting the notice of the regular meeting to the Commissioner's official newspaper on February 7, 2019, posting the notice where required and filing a copy of the notice with the Commission clerk. Allenhurst?
Here.
Asbury Park? Yes. Interlaken?
Here.
Neptune?
Here.
Ocean?
Here.
Resolution 1951, a resolution to approve the minutes of the regular meeting August 15, 2019. Deal Lockgarter and Neptune do not vote. Would someone like to offer?
Offer.
Second?
Second.
Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of the Dealer Commission held on August 15, 2009, being the same, are hereby approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1952, a resolution to approve the treasurer's report and pay the bills.
Reading the treasurer's report and bill list for September 19th, 2019. Our balance on hand from the previous month was $111,000.14. We had total receipts of $167.30. We had total disbursements of $13,248.63, some of which was grant disbursements. The total on deposit presently is now $97,918.81.
Someone please offer.
Offer.
Allenhurst?
Aye.
Asbury Park?
Yes.
Interlaken?
Yes.
Neptune?
Yes.
Ocean?
Yes.
I just have one thing to say. I did get a check from Ocean Township for $69,000 to pay for some of our expenses from the grant, so we can get reimbursed.
Could you repeat that?
We received a check from Ocean Township to help us cover the money that we put out
Great,
for the
thank
grant.
you.
$69,000.
Me that too.
That's fine.
Rectification.
Ready? As you know, we held a pre-construction meeting for the electrification of the flume. Subsequent to that, we submitted a report to the Army Corps of Engineers requesting that the project scope be expanded slightly to include the installation of a tide gate in the outer section of the flume by the surge chamber. That was all approved by the Corps. So at our last meeting, we authorized the contract for the base bid, which was the electrification of the flume and all accessory improvements to the gatehouse, and bringing in the primary service and putting in all the telemetry necessary. And also for alternates 1 and 2, which are modifying the surge chamber, which is about 300 plus feet east of the gatehouse, or east of Ocean Avenue. And also putting that, we call it a knife gate. It's a manually operated gate that drops down and can prevent the surge of the ocean from coming back into the flume, into the lake. What we've observed historically is that for major storm events, when your storm is either active or over, you open the sluice gates and you drop about 2 inches per hour out of the lake. So if you have 2 feet of water, it takes a while to drop the lake because 2 inches per hour go out. Then when the tide changes, if you don't close the gates because you can't get to the gatehouse, ocean surges back in and you bring in about 1 inch per hour back into the lake. So we put this in for those high volatile tidal surge storms where we want to prevent that surge of water from coming back into the lake. Met with the contractor. He's commenced work, and 2 things he's doing now are getting shop drawings to us for the major structural components, the tide gate, the electrification, and some other features in the gatehouse, and also scheduling JCP&L to come out to bring the proper service and service panel to the gatehouse. Those two things are the biggest lead time on the project. Once those are completed, we'll be able to mobilize and start working on the project.
We have a target date for completion?
We gave them approximately 90 days. Army Corps, the state said, on or about the end of the year, wouldn't be bad. We were looking to get it done in this fiscal year because the Corps wants to close out the nourishment project. And the reason that's important is because this was funded through the beach nourishment. So the funding came from a congressional authorization. Thanks for your help on that. And came to the Deal Lake Commission because the Corps couldn't get it into their contract for the beach restoration. So those projects went from Lock Arbor through Allenhurst through Deal, and then from Deal through Elberon through Long Branch. They're both completed now. They're doing the final punch list. Some outfalls had to be rehabilitated, so when that's done, the Corps wants to close the project out, and this funding should be closed out at the same time. So they're happy with it because it was under budget, or right at the budget, and we should be able to oversee construction. When it actually starts and we mobilize, we'll let everybody know, because you may want to have an event and let the public know so they're aware of what's going on.
Terrific. That's great.
And just so you know, what Jesse was referring to in the reimbursement is Ocean Township is working with the commission, and Ocean Township appropriated the fund and appropriated a bond to fund the construction portion of the project, because as we know from our esteemed attorney, we can't do that. The DLA Commission cannot do that. We can't appropriate money and pay a contractor. So Ocean Township is doing that for us. We are invoicing Ocean Township, so we authorize the work before anyone gets paid. Ocean Township will write the check, and when the project is completed, we'll go back to the DEP and the Army Corps and get reimbursement in full. And that's $500,000 for construction, $50,000 for engineering and associated costs, and then they agreed to reimburse any additional costs as necessary.
Did I hear you correctly when you said the tide gate is manually operated?
Yes. We don't have, I'll say manually, but manually similar fashion to what we do now. So you can hook up, I forget what they call it, it's not just a drill. It's an apparatus that you can hook up to lower it, raise it electrically, but with the use of a drill. But you can do it manually with a hand.
Is it a wheel?
Yeah.
How far out is this tide gate?
Pardon?
How far out is the tide gate? Is it right at the sluice gate?
About 300 feet where the surge chamber, if you walk out on the pedestrian way, adjacent to the flume,
Is it
say
in the surge chamber?
4 by 8,
It's in the surge chamber.
it's in the surge
Okay,
chamber.
so it's existing structure there now.
Got it.
Yeah, right where the stones end.
That's only going to be utilized under certain conditions.
Absolutely.
It's not going to be utilized as much as the sluice gate is.
Absolutely not, that's correct. Only those certain tidal conditions. We have one in Rec Pond we put in after Hurricane Sandy, and we've used it since Hurricane Sandy. It was finished about a year later, maybe a half dozen times, maybe 5 times since then. And it's easy to tell now, because we have a link from Stevens Institute that tells us when the ocean water elevation is rising, and they give us a code red. And if they think it's going to be above high tide by a certain number of feet, they'll tell us. And we can go on the link and we tell how many feet they think it's going to be above. So if they think it's going to be 3 feet above, we know that's at the elevation of our spillway, so we start to be concerned. If it's 4 or 5 feet above, we're very concerned. So if we know there's a storm coming in, and we know the tide's going to be elevated, and we know there's going to be a storm surge, we would drop the gate.
How many hours ahead did they give you that?
Would we do it?
How many hours ahead did they give you that information?
Oh boy, sometimes 2 days, sometimes 3 days. Yeah, it's plenty of
Plenty
time.
of hours.
And they update it constantly through the course of the storm. So even, I don't think I got one yet, I can check for this rough sea. We're getting it started today, we'll go through Friday, maybe Saturday. We'll get code red from Stevens Institute on that, because the tide will be raised.
From who?
Stevens Institute.
Oh, Stevens.
Yeah.
But we don't get the same flexibility and ease of use with these tide gates as we do.
No, we don't. But like Brian said, it's a very
It's only under
focused,
certain circumstances
Yeah.
that we're going to utilize it.
the
You gotta get
worst
permission for that?
in terms of,
Closing the gate, closing that gate? You have the DEP
No, we are, that's a good point. We are, when it's constructed, we will enter, the DLA Commission will enter into a memorandum of agreement, some document with the DEP, so they know what our intent is for opening and closing it. So we'll give them all the technical data, we'll tell them what our intent is, and then they'll sign off on it, and that's how we'll operate it. It's not necessarily a permit, it's a memorandum of agreement.
Well, this is something we've been trying to accomplish for many, many years now.
I'm going to say 35 to 40
I think it's great. As long as I've been on the commission, that's where kudos to everybody.
What it allows us to do, so everybody from the public knows, it allows the commission and the towns, because they can be associated also, to drop the gate before, during, after a storm event, drop the sluice gates, or open the sluice gates under the gatehouse to allow water to leave the pond if we want to leave, if we want water to go out and get a little bit of freeboard, we call it, get a little depth of water elevation lowered so that the storm water can come in. We can open the gates electronically before the storm comes, close them, let the storm hit. As the storm passes or during the storm event, we can open them again as the tide is low and close them as the tide is high to prevent that surge of water coming in. If the surge is too great, and it's going to come in anyway because the gates have been closed before, and you see the water surging in, you've seen videos of it probably, and it comes right over the spillway structure right into the lake. We'll be able to now close the tide gate, which will prevent water from coming up the flume into the lake itself.
And just to clarify, Peter, the DEP sets a limit on how low the lake can be lowered during each one of those events. That's part of our program.
Yeah, used to be 12 inches. I think they maybe relaxed it to 18 inches now, but we have what's called a lake lowering permit, which gives us the opportunity or the ability to lower the lake under a permit, so we're not doing it in a manner that's not basically approved by the state.
Peter, I have a question. I know that on occasion there have been obstructions, be it branches or something that gets stuck. Will this electrification prevent that at all, or could we still prevent that?
Won't prevent it, but it'll probably minimize it because it'll allow us to control the flow a little better. After Sandy, actually Don Rocco and I went down, and we were seeing a high rate of water flow out when the gates were closed. So one of the two of us went down in the gatehouse to the bottom and saw that there was an obstruction under one of the gates. So we had to raise it and we had to get out. Something larger than that we haven't had for a while, but we used to have.
You were able to get the obstruction out, or by raising it?
We had somebody come in from Public Works and do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They really have to get down. And
You have to know
see
the operation and you have to know what's happening. When the gates are closed, there should be no flow out of the lake. If there is and you can see it, then you know something's not right.
Shane.
Is there a separate gate system that
You
is
have
for
to
the
wait
normal,
till-
like, Asbury lake?
Yeah, I have to wait for, oh, sorry.
Yeah, for the separate gate system, it's not a public portion, that's all right.
For normal rainstorms, we're new to the lake.
That's all right.
I know that they bring it out for certain rainstorms and.
They are really the ones, if you look at the gatehouse, the gatehouse has a spillway, which is a concrete structure that runs across. Usually the elevation of the lake is approximately at the top of the spillway. When the lake rises, it can go over the spillway and into the flume and out to the ocean. If you go down 7 feet below the top of the spillway, there are 2 4-foot gates in that concrete structure. We literally raise them up and the water goes out at a lower elevation. That's what can drop the pond elevation of the lake. So we do that before a storm with a permit to get the volume in the lake lowered, so if we have a significant rain event, properties don't flood. That's what we're looking at. Drop it too much and you don't have a particularly significant rain event and we get a lot of complaints. If you drop it not enough and we get a particularly high rainfall event and we get a lot of complaints. So we have to be very careful in how we do it, when we do it. And Chairman Don and Vice Chairman Don, who are 2 different people, both are very aware of weather conditions, rainfall conditions, watershed conditions, time of year, wind direction, all those things come into play. You have to know if the groundwater is saturated, because if it's not, a heavy rain event may not have a significant impact on pond elevation. So we know all those things. We try to be proactive. I think we have been more recently. Once in a while, the gates aren't opened or opened and aren't closed, and we deal with it, but we try to be proactive.
No matter how sagacious and judicious our people are, we still get a lot of complaints, right?
Yes. But that's what we're here for, to
All right.
resolve those.
Broken Bridge.
Oh, the next item on the agenda is the bridge from Interlake into Lock Harbor. I have had no update from the county other than the project was essentially completed, but there are punch list items remaining. And the county has performed some of those items, which included additional landscaping of the island areas. I think they also are installing some irrigation for the landscaped areas. As far as the bridge structure or completion of any other work, I haven't been advised of it.
Okay. 319 grant update?
I can give you the Princeton Hydro update. It was emailed to me, so I can
Okay.
go over that. And Peter can add to that as we move along. But basically, at this point in time, and I'll let Peter talk about the manufactured treatment device and the other DMPs, because Turner Shell is taking care of that. And Jack Spansky from Princeton Hydro was coordinating with Turner on that. The other three big things, though, is another component of the project is to install 2 floating wetland islands in Sunset Lake. The purpose of those structures is to absorb nutrients, to try to reduce, what's called passively, the amount of algae growth that occurs by, rather than having the nutrients that are in Sunset end up in the algae, it gets sucked up by these wetland plants. Each one is about 250 square feet in size. And they do have, there's some good literature showing that they improve the capability in terms of removing nutrients. So one that's about 250 square feet can remove about 20 pounds of phosphorus annually, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 1 pound of phosphorus generates 1,000 pounds of algae. So when you think of it from that perspective, it helps. It may also benefit that lake from them not having to do algicide treatments and decrease the amount of copper sulfate that's being dumped in there. So in any event, Princeton Hydro has a meeting scheduled with the Sunset Lake Commission for October 1st. The purpose of that meeting is really to establish establish a final location for the two floating wetland islands. So right now, one is proposed for the intersection of Grand and who would that be? 73? Grand and
Grand and Fifth or Grand and Sunset?
Sunset. It's Sunset.
On the north side.
Yeah, on the north side of Sunset. Right. And the other one, it was up at the far western end, where there's been some land disturbance, previous dredging, and they can't get anything to grow because of the canopy. The idea is that it would be positioned in a way that it can intercept some of that runoff from the quote-unquote what should be lawn, and also uptake some of the nutrients in that area. That's the 2 proposed locations. When they finalize those locations with the Sunset Lake Commission, the 2 floating wetland islands will be ordered with installation planned for, which is supposed to be in the spring, so that we installed and planted in the spring. The other thing is that part of the grant involves conducting these, what we had termed breakfast meetings with DPW, elected officials, and land, like the land board, planning board, or zoning board personnel, or environmental commission members who are willing to attend. Now that we have a better handle on what's happening with the BMPs and some of the other things that in the ground things, Princeton Hydro is trying to coordinate that first breakfast meeting, which will definitely be held before December. At this point, there's too much up in the air. I'm not sure exactly the way they're going to shoot for that, but My guess is it'll probably be sometime early November, before Thanksgiving, and get that one out of the way. There's 3 meetings. Purpose of each one of those meetings is not only to kind of like give people that will be eventually responsible for the maintenance of all of these structures that are being put in. Not only give them, a chance to learn more about these green infrastructure BMPs, but also promote the use of green infrastructure in other applications throughout the member towns. And then Jeannie and I will be doing a presentation in October on green infrastructure, similar to what we did with the Lake Lowland presentation. A short half-hour pre-meeting presentation that'll discuss, what green infrastructure is all about, benefits, how it's better than some of the conventional stormwater management techniques, and then provide some examples of what people can do on their own lots and some of the things that we're doing on a larger regional scale, what can be done in commercial establishments, what have you. So that's the Prince of Hydro update on 319, and a little bit about what.
Could I
we
add to
might
that
do.
too, since I'm not sure if I spoke with you, but since our last meeting, I've had several conversations with Tammy Miller from the DEP, who is Office of Land Use, and they are very interested, especially since we are, the stewards for 7 municipalities. They're very interested in helping educate the municipalities, the people who are in charge of overseeing when they give out permits for new construction for homes and businesses. They find that oftentimes they just don't have a knowledge base. So people are doing things on their properties and in asking the towns for guidance and getting sometimes bad guidance, no guidance, or a little guidance, or they tell them to call the DLC that may not necessarily be the people to call.
Jeannie, I don't want to stop you, but I made a note to bring that up under new business tonight.
Oh, you
Because
did?
we've had several issues over the last month that I think the commission's been asked to get involved in.
Yes.
And maybe we shouldn't, or maybe we should.
Right.
But I think we should talk about it. I talked to Don about it, I talked to Steve about it.
Okay,
I talked
so
to Jesse about
just
it,
to
so we'll
say,
work on it.
she's interested in
I think it's important for us to be involved.
working in these
Yeah.
education, these breakfast type meetings, or however, dinner, lunch, whatever they are, but in helping to educate municipalities and the public.
And Peter can add more to this as well, because he's like getting in the trenches on a day-to-day basis. But now, with the new stormwater, the modifications that have been made recently, the stormwater regulations and to the BMP, the New Jersey Stormwater BMP manual. In the past, green infrastructure was sort of, that'd be a nice thing to do. Now, it's a mandatory thing. So that means that, learning more about these simple vegetated structures. I shouldn't say simple, because they are engineered, they're highly engineered, they sort of look simple, but they are highly engineered if they're going to work properly. But, my point being is that now there's that much more of a push regulatory-wise to implement these things. And then if you look at the MS4 permits, which regulate, small sewer systems statewide, there's a linkage between the MS4 permit process and green infrastructure, because you're trying to reduce the amount of volume that is being discharged into streams and rivers and lakes. So this all makes sense, and it's sort of like, coalescing at the right time. And the commission's in the right place with a combination of projects that are being done to show as examples of how this can be done. Past projects, we have plenty of past projects that we've done with previous 319 money. But it's a really good time to get it, for us to get out there and promote this. And these breakfast meetings will provide a really good forum for that.
That's great. Okay, going on. So I think organic material removal from Fireman's Pond.
Okay, Fireman's Pond is located entirely in Ocean Township along Mr. Pecco Bryan can tell you better than I can, since he was involved in one of the first rehabilitation projects there, along with Pecco Drive at
Just at the intersection of Grassmere and Rebecca.
It's on the Ocean Township side in the northwest quadrant. About an acre of water surface area, and it's been neglected, you know, because there was no reason ever to do anything there. And over the years, sediments built up, vegetation's built up along the shoreline. You had a very aggressive project there, Brian, as I recall, to do shoreline maintenance and non-native tree removal or species vegetation removal. What the Township of Ocean wants to do now is to remove sediment from the pond. They tried a couple in-house things that didn't really work very well, although we knew they weren't going to. So what they've done now is they've entered into a shared services agreement with Monmouth County. And we used to do it, Steve, we used to do it through Mosquito Commission, where they had equipment and manpower. It's not through the Mosquito Commission anymore, it's actually through engineering, public works and engineering. So Ocean Township is working with Monmouth County, and I think within a year's time, they're going to be ready to mobilize and have a project to remove the sediment. So that's a positive thing. There is a significant amount of sediment in that pond.
Just have to keep on going east with it as well.
Is the county using that as a pilot? Did you do that in other?
They've already done it in other locations. We've used them in Terrace Pond. I've used them in Wreck Pond. Sylvan Lake, Wesley Lake, counties mobilized and removed sediment in lakes. They have the manpower, they have the equipment now to do it. Most important thing is the trucking and the disposal. So we work that out. And Ocean Township is a municipality that luckily can find locations for the disposal of this type of material. We test it, make sure it's clean. If it's residential standard clean, it's good. If it's not, we can put it in a non-residential. We've tried to go to the county landfill. We've gone there before. They don't like it because it has too much fine silt material. And at the landfill, they have slope standards for cover. Yeah, but yes, you can use it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Water testing, Monmouth University.
I mean, there's nothing to report on that. I know that they've been out there collecting data, but the data has not been shared with us. I've got to place another call or an email, either, you know, to Dr. Adolph or to John.
Yeah, we should just ask them and say we need it by the December meeting before we
Yeah.
close the year out, so we
And they may just be compiling all the information they've collected over the whole summer and put it out as a single report. But, yeah,
Okay.
we haven't seen any of it yet.
I would think the same as ship and sniff program. I participated in making the collections, so I know that was done. I don't think we've heard anything from them at this point. Right. Okay. Lock Harbor tree planting.
I can update them.
That's
You want me
good.
to?
That's good. Yes, I
Okay.
do.
As of today, as you know, former Deal Lake Commissioner from Lock Harbor, Aaron Dolan, spearheaded this with a funding provided from Stephen Casson, from the Casson family. And it's a wonderful plan. It's a design plan certified by a landscape architect. We received bids and awarded it to a contractor who has been working with us. They are ready to mobilize at the beginning of October to start the tree planting. And in an effort to make sure, since Aaron's no longer a part of the commission, to make sure Lock Harbor is fully aware of everything that's going on. It's not just landscaping, it's benches and trash receptacles. I asked Chairman Brockle if he would take the lead in contacting Lock Harbor to make sure. He already had previously, but now we know the timeline. He's going to do that. But unbeknownst to me, my project engineer contacted the village clerk this morning, let her know the project schedule, and actually gave her a copy of the benches and the trash receptacles, so she could talk to the commissioners. They want to know the exact locations, which I would like to know as well, and then we'll bring it here to a commission meeting and provide to them. So it's moving. So, you know, at our next meeting, we should be
It's going to be a long meeting.
underway.
I'll be sick that day. Right, we're going to hold off the recording of Deal Lake Commission meetings until our October meeting, for full discussion. although this is obviously a test today.
Oh, we know that. Okay,
Um,
that's good.
Nobility Crest. Do you have any
I
updates?
can give you an update on that as well. Don would have if you were here. I spoke to Chairman Brockle today. We talked about this. It was a discharge of sediment through a development site in Ocean Township. The township and the developer have been working continuously since that event occurred. And as of today, they have installed all measures necessary to contain all runoff from their development site. That includes retrofitting drainage inlets. It includes installation of stormwater management devices. And it also includes, I think it was Cedar Village, that's to the east of Nobility Crest, installation of turbidity barriers or reinstalling or retrofitting existing turbidity barriers in 2 significantly large detention facilities in Cedar Village. So the drainage flow, obviously from west to east, as it gets from, say, back where my office is, near Bound Road, through Nobility Crest, toward Route 18, through Cedar Village, under Route 18, through the channels of Cedar Square Mall, around the Loop Road, then into Terrace Pond, and Hollow Brook. It has to be controlled on the west end. So it's being controlled now. Now, if anybody wants to know the volume of sediment that left that site, we really don't know, but we have confirmed that it was colloidal clay. Steve can talk more about it if we have to. It's very, very fine clay, no more than a 1/16 of an inch, probably less than that, we've seen anywhere throughout the corridor of discharge. So there's really no way to measure it. But we saw the discoloration, which is what spurred the
Right.
investigation.
It looks far worse than
And it was.
it is in terms of like the volume of deposition, because the stuff is just, it just stays in suspension forever. And so it just looks like, it's cotton out there. And just to remind the public, the measures that were originally installed in Cedar Village, that are being updated now, again, were as a result of the Deal Lake Commission's efforts in tracking down what was happening during that development and getting those basins up there retrofitted or maybe benefiting from like some additional sediment groups that were not originally in the design. So Peter was up there, I was up there, Benford back in the day, and really, took some aggressive measures then. And it's good to see that some additional measures are going to be implemented, again, as a result of input from the commission and from the residents that live along Colonial Terrace as well.
Had that development site, now we're talking going to Nobility Crest, did they have measures in place that were overrun, or did they have nothing in place that allowed the erosion to occur?
I don't think they're allowed to, I don't know the answer, but I don't think they're allowed to commence construction without measures being in place.
Right.
So I think it was a particular event that occurred that caused it to happen.
So is there no penalty for the developer since
We
whatever
have to
measures
talk,
they
we have
had?
to talk to Ocean Township.
That's
They're the-
Ocean Township would have to pursue that.
It's like that barrier fence, isn't it?
Pardon?
Is it like the barrier fences that they put
The barriers, the turbidity barriers are actually in and underwater in the detention basins that are linked to the drainage system discharges from the site. So they should be enough, and they have been enough in the past. But like Steve said, that all occurred because we had investigative reporters out there from the Deal Lake Commission that tracked it from, we thought it was coming from Cedar Square Mall years ago when it first occurred. So we went to the mall, we looked at the Loop Road, everything was chocolate colored. So we went to Route 18, same thing. We went on the west side of Route 18, same thing. So we go through this clearing of trees, and I know Bill, Steve and I, we went out, parked on Route 18, kind of take your life in your hands, walk through the woods, and all of a sudden we see a clearing with kind of runoff coming clear across an excavated site. So today we have measures in place that shouldn't allow that to happen, but sometimes it does.
Are they the same developer? Different developer?
Different.
And I think, Brian, in this recent, episode, there was, assistance also from the Watershed Alliance,
Right.
In tracking down what was happening. There were some things that were told to the developers by regulatory people because of the emergency nature of, the amount of rain and things like that, that I think made it even more egregious, and resulted in, more of this muddy water coming downstream. But, that's then what we have to focus on is, we have measures in place that let's, we have to make sure that those events don't occur again.
Right.
But I think at least when I hear that, I think the point there is that, does it always happen after the fact? We have things happen and somebody sees it, thank goodness, but if they don't.
But as Peter pointed out, though, for a development to get an approval, they're going to have to get freehold soil conservation district approval.
Right.
And they're also going to have to get planning board approval, and the engineer's going to review that. And there are standard measures that are required by state law. The stormwater regulations, 7:8, require specific things.
But is it the contractor's responsibility to make sure that those measures are maintained? And if they're not maintained,
That falls under.
how do they get penalized?
Right.
Yeah.
Is there punitive damages in their bond? Or is
Well,
that something
the
town should?
the punitive side of it would be a stop work order, which delays their project and puts a financial burden on them. So that has to be implemented by the town. If they work judiciously, I'll say, to correct the measures, that's what Ocean Township, I believe, chose to do, to immediately make sure that what was happening was stopped, and then to implement the corrective measures to prevent it from happening.
Yeah, Peter and I were asked to try to quantify how much sediment comes up in the lake.
This was a tough one.
And when you're dealing with this colloidal stuff, it's really, really difficult. It's not like when you have sand washing in, then you can quantify how much material. This stuff is so fine.
We talked
Like I said,
about,
this is the stuff that stays floating,
Right, it
makes the
stays
water
floating.
look.
and in order for it to leave, you have to have kind of a discharge of water
Right,
in and out.
you gotta flush it.
But we talked about a prior project in Neptune at the Walmart site,
Yeah.
which had a failure in erosion control measures in a significant storm event. We actually tracked the sediment from the Walmart site down Jumping Brook Road into Jumping Brook and quantified the material that went into Jumping Brook. And the developer was penalized because of that. If you can't quantify that, it's really hard to establish a penalty.
That's the gist, you can't quantify it, you can't penalize it.
Yeah.
Okay. We discussed that. Fall cleanup. We've all determined a date already.
Yes, October 26th, 9 a.m. at the boat ramp. We have our water
October
going
26th, you said?
Yes.
I have a commitment from Buscardoo Coffee
Oh,
to
great.
donate again to our cleanup. They will bring coffee, laid stirrers, sugar, choice and milk.
Very
What
good.
is that?
Plastic straws?
Buscardoo, same,
Buscadoo?
yeah. 5-gallon Cambro. I'll go pick it up in the morning and bring it home.
What's the
Great,
date?
thank you. And it's also
What is it?
Monmouth University's big
October
event. so we can-
26th.
Right, and we also get Monmouth University involved in it as we have the last couple of years. Yeah, last time we had over 100 people. Got a lot of stuff out of the lake. Yeah, vote, we got to vote out. New Jersey Lake Summit update.
Okay, so Don and I went up to Lake Aptcom, we had a meeting, I think it was September 4th, with representatives from the Lake Aptcom Commission, the Lake Aptcom Foundation, and the Greenwood Lake Commission. The gist of that was to really start to push some of the draft legislation that Eric had put together to develop a standard for cyanobacteria, for blue-green algae blooms, harmful algae blooms. So we're writing, I'm co-authoring a white paper that I'm going to submit to DEP. We'll have a draft of that ready for our next meeting, which is this coming Wednesday. The goal then is to, although DEP has a guidance document on harmful algae blooms, they don't follow their own guidance document. And on top of that, as you saw this year, there was a lot of confusion. Which lakes were open for boating? Why one lake was closed for swimming and not boating? Why was this lake closed for boating? And things along those lines. So there is a guidance that's based on cell counts and a whole bunch of really good science. They don't follow their own guidance, and that creates a ton of confusion. And up at PAPCOM, it resulted in like a big economic impact to that community.
So this is going to try to make solid standards that everyone can follow and.
Right, now, getting a standard passed and put into NJC 7:9B is going to be, that's a tough hill to climb. However, if we can have like a protocol that is agreed upon by DEP, and then DEP then instructs the county health departments and local health departments, this is what you follow, then I think it'll make for far less confusion. I just found out that DEP had a meeting with representatives from New York State, from Department of Environmental Conservation. And New York has had a procedure in place for about 5-6 years for HAPs, how to respond to HAPs. And so DEP is looking at that, and they may adapt some of that. But keep in mind, it's not DEP that closes a lake to swimming or boating. It's still the responsibility of the either the local health department or the county health department. But right now, they can close a lake to contact recreation just based on visual. It looks green, and that's a mistake because you can have a really good algae that has no toxins that can create a bloom. And why are you closing the lake? And on the flip side of the coin, what it is doing is stimulating a lot of these lake associations every time they see a bloom. They hit it with copper sulfate, and that can be the worst thing because then it just creates an environment that's better for the cyanobacteria. So you shoot yourself in the foot doing that. So in any event, we're hoping that before the end of the year, we can get an audience with DEP, sit down with them with this white paper, and say, guys, you already have a guidance document. Just follow it, and see how, see
You
what
said
happens.
that they have a guidance document and it's based on really good science. That's what I heard you say. So this is DEP, and DEP is not responsible for the decision on lake closures. It's the Board of Health in the local municipalities or whatever entity is responsible for that. So what good?
Legally, they have no jurisdiction. They can issue a warning. DEP can issue a warning, or an advisory as they call it, but it's not within their purview to make a closure.
Is the DEP guidance, which you said, guidelines, which you said is based on good science, similar to that which is in effect in New York?
It's similar, it's a little bit different. It's published, it's online, you can download it,
What good is it going to do to pass these new guidelines or these new protocols or standards or however you want to call them, if it's still up to the local boards to make that decision, and the local boards are making it based on what they see, which is apparently not a valid basis upon which to make a
But
close.
here's the problem, Bruce. Right now, there's too much misinformation, and they don't really, the locals don't really know what they should be doing, okay? So what they do know is that DEP says if the water looks green, you can issue an advisory, okay? And then you're supposed to follow it up with specific type of testing, okay? But what ends up happening is that instead of just an advisory warning people, don't go in the water, or be careful, or whatever, then it becomes a mandatory closure. That's not supposed to be what's happening. Ideally, if we had a standard, similar to what's done with E. coli, you would know, once you got over like a certain cell count, then that triggers an advisory. Once you got above another cell count, then that triggers a closing. And so, that's what we're shooting for. Like right now, DEP uses 20,000 cells per ml, but it has to be 50% of its cyanobacteria to issue an advisory. But what's happening is that an advisory is issued, and then that's being used as a ground for closure. That's not supposed to be the
Well, I understand that, but it sounds like what you're saying is that what's going to happen is we're going to have a better standard, better information, but it's still going to be up to that local board to make that decision.
Right.
Whose responsibility is it to educate those local boards on what the proper protocols are?
DEP.
So that's the problem. They're not educating the lay people.
Yeah, I think because DEP's scrambling too, This is the first year that halves have been so widespread statewide. A lot of it had to do with the weather. It really didn't have to do with, a really wet 2018 and a super wet July. So this is the first time they've actually had this many hats statewide. But to get to your point, Bruce, this is what New York does. The New York DEC does not have, it's not within their purview, or they're legally, they can't close the lake. But they issue the warnings. And then the locals follow what DEC is telling them.
Let's hope that happens.
Right.
Everybody's afraid that people want to see YA, It's probably has a lot to do with it. But with the help of our esteemed representative there, maybe we'll get things done.
Right. Yeah, I think we're headed in the right direction.
All right, moving on. An update on the presentation, I think we sort of touched that earlier today. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if the other commissioners, I'm going to be just promoting that a little bit in the coaster, the Asbury Park Sun next door, and the electronic board in Asbury Park. But if anybody would and the other commissioners would like to take it to your towns and ask them in whatever way you could promote it in your town a little bit, I'll give you a write-up, a news release, and give it to them. I'm sorry? No, this is
No,
for
that
the
the presentation they're gonna-
presentation that's
Stormwater presentation.
stormwater management.
And when's that going to be and where's it going to be? It's going to be at the next
Maybe
meeting?
at our next meeting.
Yeah, 6:30
Okay.
Be like a workshop.
workshop before our monthly meeting in October.
Very
So
good.
if you want
Why don't you
that,
send something around? so-
Yeah, Send it to everybody, and
I'll send it to
I'm sure
everybody.
they'll talk about it.
okay,
Please do.
great.
Thank you.
Seaview Mall update, I think that we'll defer that to Chairman Bracco.
I think so.
Okay. All right, so let's go over new business. Again, I think we're going to defer the first one. Floating docks on lake. I think that's one's on. Oh, you have something?
Well, yeah, I have a meeting next week with Asbury Park, and Brian Watkins is coming to the meeting with the city manager, the mayor, and Eileen Chapman. We're meeting to discuss that floating dock
Okay.
possibility
Okay, well, that's
of
a
getting
start.
one for Asbury Park.
Well,
But we have to see what they think about it.
Right, it's always the liabilities that kill those things. 2018 audit.
I handed out the audit to all the commissioners, and you can review it and we'll vote on it next meeting. I think there's, but how did I know
Just add on to that thing about the floating dock. One of the things that the reaction from Asbury Park was, well, aren't there any other places on the lake that they can build a floating dock besides Asbury Park? How come we're always asked? That was the comment. So I don't know how to go back with that. Any,
They have a boat ramp, they have a lot of planning,
right.
they've done very well
They
this
said,
summer, thank you.
right, we can name several other places for you to do that. Any response you want me to bring to them and to?
Nothing you can publish.
What's that? What did you say?
Nothing you can publish.
Okay, I mean,
It's really based on access
Right,
and public land.
Yeah.
When you go into Ocean Township, go into western areas, you don't have access and you don't have public access to the pond.
yeah.
Even Terrace
You don't even
Pond,
have the depth.
when we dredged Terrace Pond, Ryan, you were here for that. When you dredged Terrace Pond, we got a lot of criticism because the dredging of Terrace Pond did not include public access to the improvement, if you want to call it that.
Right,
In Asbury Park, you have accessibility, you have public lands adjacent to the edge of the pond, and you have,
And you have the depth. I mean,
Water.
even the western part by Wickerpecco, that
Nothing.
whole area, there's no depth there.
right.
So why even have a floating dock? There's- you
yeah,
can't get
Brian,
out.
your house, behind your house would be a great location for one. But you don't want the public to access it there, it's private property, and you don't have the depth of water, you have the
Okay.
depth of
They
sediment.
can get in, they get stuck.
I don't, I
Yeah,
understand
that's
that,
really
but
why.
I, with
Okay.
Just-
any other input, I'm open to it.
It's just the way the lake evolved.
Okay,
Market Asbury Park is, that's the launching point for deal.
There you go.
the
It's the
accessible.
gateway to deal with.
That's why we'll make a sign, the
Get back to
gateway,
the
the gateway to Deal Lake.
There you go.
We'll give them that.
What's
Yeah.
that?
The gateway to Deal Lake,
There you
yes,
go.
very
It's
much.
like
Asbury
a
Park.
rolling empire.
That's right.
They can put it next to the.
Bruce Springsteen claims none of that.
Yeah.
Gateway.
Bruce Springsteen flowed on this
Okay,
way.
thank you for your help.
Okay.
See here,
That's good. Okay, last one, resolution 19.053, authorization and tentative 2020 meeting schedule.
Someone please offer.
I'll offer.
Second.
Second,
Hey, there we go.
This is just
You can
authorizing.
read that, go ahead.
Be it resolved by the Deal Lake Commission that the following tentative 2020 meeting schedule is hereby designated. And then there's the list of the dates. Be it further resolved that the meetings will take place at the Borough of Interlaken Municipal Building, 100 Grassmere Avenue at 7 p.m. All in favor?
aye.
John, I just got two quick things. I've been doing a lot of these harmful algae bloom presentations statewide for like regional conservation voters and ANJAC and other organizations. I want to make one of those available, for the commission to put up on commission website. So, it's maybe about like 30 slides or whatever, but it explains what a HAB is, why they occur, and a little bit about, some of the things that have done to prevent
I
HABs.
think that's a great idea. We've discussed about the fact that, at least 4 times a year, the workshops and invite the public and do all that. I think the education is the paramount issue here.
And then talking about education, the second thing is that I mentioned this before, but the North American Lake Management Society, their national or international meeting this year is up in Burlington, Vermont.
Right.
It's the week of November the 11th. So it'll be probably the last time in about 5 years that it'll be on the East Coast. I'm doing a presentation there. I'm also doing a half-day stormwater course. So check it out. It is a little bit pricey, but it might be something worthwhile to send to one
Okay?
commissioner. And I'll make a plug for myself. I'm also doing my 2-day lake course at Rutgers the first week in November. You can check it out on their website.
Being retired, we do a lot of
Yeah, but
stuff.
that's why I retired, so I could do more teaching and stuff. But, that's about like the 27th year I've done that course, and we normally get about 30, 35 people there. So I can probably get a commissioner in for a discounted.
When is it?
I hear you. I
What's
hear
the
you.
title of the course and when is it?
It's, the title of the course is Lake Management, and you can go on the continuing ed, website is Rutgers. I
Okay,
forget exactly, I think it's November
that's
3rd or
it's
something like that.
November 3rd?
I'll tell you exactly.
Okay.
But,
Which
Yeah.
campus do you teach it on?
what's that?
Which campus?
It's been taught over at Duke Farms, which is a really nice setting. So this is, it's actually the 7th and the 8th.
7th and the 8th, okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Cook campus?
Cook campus, yeah.
Well, no, Duke Farm is in Hillsborough, so it's not,
Oh.
it's not,
It's not even at Rutgers.
it's not even at Rutgers.
Just call it Rutgers.
Yeah, well, it is a Rutgers course, but it's
It's a
it's,
Rutgers course in
Right.
Hillsborough.
right, but it's easier to get to than it is
I'm
to get
confused,
into.
I'm sorry. It's too hard for me.
It's easier to get there than it is to get into New Brunswick.
All right.
All right. I'm now going to ask that we open this meeting to the public.
A motion to open the
One more
meeting to
thing
the...
I wanted to offer.
Yeah.
If anybody who fishes for bass, anybody interested, do you know
In what?
about the bonus fish, that bonus permit they're offering this year? I don't know if it's new or if it's the same, those who fish with them. So anyway, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, you can get a bonus permit this year. One fish 24 inches to less than 28 from September 1st through December 31st. The permit applications close October 31st. If anybody's interested, you can have it, I don't fish.
There's a motion to open the meeting to the public.
Oh.
Second?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're now open to the public.
Comments?
Any questions or comments?
Did you learn a lot about the lake? Is it new?
Yeah, we're new to the lake. We bought a home about 2 years ago on the ocean side. And we've worked really hard to redo our home. And I guess we were here just trying to see if there was a place that you guys have for homeowners. I think you had mentioned dealing with Tammy from the DEP. Is there going to be a place where your homeowners can really check off a tick list, basically saying, what am I going to do to work on this house?
Yeah.
You know, to have our home, we worked really hard on it, and we went to the Township of Ocean, and they basically told us that this is handled by the Lake Commission for a floating dock, perhaps, or for working on the edge of the lake. And then which we consider to be landscaping, redoing stuff that was done years ago for a home that was empty for 5 years, 7 years ultimately, and foreclosed on, so it was probably untouched for decades, or at least a decade prior to that. So we thought what we were doing was actually cleaning up, making it nicer, making it more appealing, making it more accessible and usable for ourselves. We reached out, we spoke with Mr. Brockle, who was kind enough to take his boat down there and look at what we did and explain what we're doing. He made a couple of suggestions, which we certainly are happy to do, and including a eco log that he suggested looking into putting in. We went this far, but we almost feel, my partner here is the only way to discuss this right now, we almost feel like it was borderline harassment. We felt like we had the police call that came to our home, then we had the township called, then we had the township engineer call that came to our home, stopped our job. Mr. Brockle came to our home, and we discussed what we were doing, said go ahead, finish up. We're planning things to protect any kind of erosion. We want to live there for a long time. We spent a huge amount of time and money to live there. We lived in Asbury Park for a number of years, and Freehold for many years. And we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. Then after that, we continued, because we were told to continue. Then not only that, then the Freehold Soil Conservation Commission comes to our house. Then the
This is based off of neighbors calling?
one particular neighbor we were informed over and over again across the lake, who, from what we understand, perhaps incorrectly, is a member of this board. So then they called the
Where do you live?
44 Ballard Drive.
Howard Drive.
So we're right across from the golf course
Oh,
on that side of the lake.
you're the guy doing that?
Yeah. So then it went even further. It went to the DEP. The DEP reached out to me and came and informed me that we need to go to them for a floating dock, which our neighbor was also called on. Our neighbor took out a dock that was literally rotting and falling in. Lovely people, and they painstakingly had everything removed from the lake, and they put a nice, smaller floating dock in. Ultimately, after dealing with the DEP, we were told that it's not a tidal water lake, and that this type of work is now authorized either by your municipality or by the governing body of the lake in this instance. So with Ocean Township basically seeing their decisions to the commission, we went ahead again and so let's move on with this again. And then since then I've had Tammy to my house, and very nice, and want to do all the right things for there. But it just seemed, and then we were also told that that by somebody else perhaps incorrectly, that a senator or a congressperson was called by this person as well. It would be nice to be a neighbor and come over and say, guys, this is what you're doing wrong, or what are you doing? And let's try and resolve this in a neighborly way. You know, we want to live here and be here for a long time and really be part of the lake. We know dozens and dozens and dozens of people who live on this wonderful lake and in this great area of Asbury and Ocean Township. And we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. But it would be really nice if there was, like you were saying, a nice process to say, how does each town handle these things? How is the DLA Commission involved in this? How should the DEP
But you have
be
to
involved
understand,
in this?
again, it defaults to the town, the docks, and that's a DEP situation.
Well, it's
When
not them.
when I
The
moved in a
DEP
decade
says it's
ago-
not them at all.
When I moved in a decade ago, I said, what kind of engines can I put on my boat? They said, well, I said, what can I do to my shore? So, I mean, it's
Yeah,
a problem.
and it's
It would be
very
nice if they gave lake owners a little.
So there's no
bit of
regulations, basically,
But,
right?
correct, there are, basically, there's no regulations.
But what I'm getting at though is.
There are regulations.
Especially if
And
it was
you're
truly someone
correct,
from
you're
this.
absolutely
If it was truly
right.
someone from this commission, it would have really been nice to say, hey, you know what, let me go knock on the door first and see these guys are.
I would be
willing
very
to work
surprised
with
if there
us.
was someone from this commission.
So
I'm
the-
sorry.
I said, I would be very surprised if it actually.
So there are regulations, and I think, what you've experienced is sometimes these regulations don't all mesh together, okay?
Yeah.
So, the Freehold Soil Conservation District, they're looking at one specific thing. So if you're under 5,000 square feet of disturbance, they're gonna say, it's not our, we
You
don't.
just laugh at us and
Right.
think you're fine. and
Right, we don't, that's not our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
DEP does have regulations that do limit
And she was very surprised that we were told to go there first.
Yeah, that no one from the township, from the DLA Commission, from the Soil Conservation Commission, I'm sorry, yeah, Soil Commission, from the township engineer, not one person says, have you reached out to the DEP, and no one did whatsoever.
It's not on your website, I mean, yeah, it's like
So, but
They should.
again, I guess what I'm getting at really is more so
consistency, I guess.
consistency. We feel like we've almost been treated dissimilarly. We really felt at this point it was like harassment to the point where, do I get an attorney for this? This is horrible to think.
Is everything straightened out now, though?
I don't know, honestly. So right now,
Just get over the call.
I guess the person who's been calling, we have to tell me we're straightened out now. or
Just
not.
call Don Brockle. Brockle, go to Brockle.
He's gonna be there,
Just leave.
Here's the thing, it's been something that we've been talking about a lot recently, is trying to get all of the municipalities to understand what the regulations are, so that when new homeowners come in, they're given, as you said initially, a punch list, a checklist to go, these are the things that you can do, these are the things that you can't. There are regulations, as Steve said, that cover land use, cutting down trees above.
Which we did not
above
do, by the way, with the trees.
the lake, and pulling out bushes, and digging and disturbing area along the lake, and there are good reasons for it. But that is the problem, that it's supposed to be the municipality that is supposed to tell the homeowner when they apply for permits to build, expand, or whatever they're doing. They're supposed to do that, and they're not doing it. So, this is what
I mean,
happens.
would you happen to be the neighbor across the lake that we've had these issues with?
I
We were
call
told
that, yeah,
Every one of those agencies and police and everybody.
right,
So what I'm getting at is that it would be really nice if you would just been neighborly. I want to be your neighbor, and I don't want to look across that lake and feel like, what does this person have against us? Someone else told us,
I
maybe
understand your
because we're
point.
gay, they're going after you. And I would hate to think that would be the case. That's a lake I want to think
right.
about.
And when I was asked, I was told to call.
But you do the same thing with every other person who go up that lake. You get on your boat or go on the thing. Have you done this with everybody up and down the lake when you've seen these things happening? From talking to DEP, no.
No, we
Yeah,
have.
DEP just said she's been called twice in the last, what? How many
Years, they said.
Right, so we have advised, as the Commission's environmental consultant, we have advised townships and private property owners when they're engaged with some type of activity at the water's edge, that they need to be careful because there are permits that may need to be obtained, or like in your case, potentially you could be within what's called a permit by rule. But within that PDR, which provides opportunity for landowners to do improvement or maintenance, let's say it's maintenance, it's specified what the limits are, as long as you stay within those limits. And that's where the town should be providing, you know, the building inspector should be providing you with, make sure that you stay within PDR or permit by rule number 1, permit by rule number 2. Those are the two that typically affect most homeowners that are on the land.
And ultimately, it seems like everything we've done has been within that permit by rule program process, which we're discussing now. But I guess again, I just wish that.
Well, I can tell you, as the commission did not get adversely try to affect you as the dealing
No.
commission.
I
understand that, but I understand your
But if the neighbors
frustration.
on the commission.
But that's a civil matter between you and someone that has.
Came to our house.
I'm not, but I'm just saying, that this is the meeting for the DLA commission and.
Well, Don conferred with me in advance, and I sent him the regs. I said, here's the things, here's what's allowed. As long as they stay within those limits, then nothing needs to be filed.
Again, I've been on the website to accommodate a few good ways to add it.
But, you know, I can tell you that, you know, I don't know if you guys tried to wade through that, but the flood hazard regulation is 270-something pages long. You know, we can direct people to certain things, but again, it's not within the commission's jurisdiction to be issuing this permits. We can provide people with guidance and say, make sure you check these.
The town was issuing permits for it, and then we're basically told.
Right, and I think that's where I was saying, you end up with
All right,
sort of like
listen,
this.
guys,
We're very sorry for what you've gone through, and on behalf of the commission, we want to welcome you, and
Thank you. We love for this.
and we hope you're there for a long, long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
any other comments from anyone?
A motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Cody.